All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Next Round. We've got our guest, Levi Henrie, on the pod here, founder of Performance Windows, host of his own podcast, D2D Success Stories, father, husband, the only person in Utah to be part of the 2,000-pound club.
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Not sure if you don't understand, it's not 2,000 pounds of food. It is 2,000 pounds of weight.
That's in competition. In competition, yeah.
There you go.
I suppose I should clarify, in competition and in powerlifting what they call raw, so not equipped.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that is the squat,
Bench and deadlift.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep, I probably could do a tenth of that, so sign me up. And also, 20 Golden Door winners this last year.
At Performance Windows, yes, sir.
Performance Windows. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Before we jump into things, always got to shout out unofficial sponsors, Liquid Death, and also C4.
Yeah, unofficial sponsors of my whole life, just everything we got going.
Here is your brand boy. Hit him up. Let's do something here. So Levi, appreciate you jumping on, man, and being here. Always fun to see new emerging companies. I mean, you guys been around almost 5 years now, so not really new, but would love to hear about, your background, what got you into doors, what initially started all of that, and obviously how we ended up here today.
For sure. Yeah, dude. So, I grew up in a military family. We moved around quite a bit. Spent time in Florida, Wyoming, and New Mexico primarily. Grew up playing football that is. Really loved lifting weights from a young age. And, I was always just super driven to succeed. Had just like a really competitive personality, I think. And, pursued football as far as I could. Kept trying to do bigger and further things with it, but unfortunately I was born a couple inches too short and certainly too slow. So anyway, yeah, man, served a mission in Peru. That was excellent. The spiritual experience was excellent. Also, a lot of the life experience of it. Learned a lot of things that I still apply, like in business, so a lot of credit to that. I don't know, am I skipping past anything you guys want to linger on? Or?
Oh, it's good, let's keep going.
Cool, man. Yeah, I kind of bounced around colleges largely due to the football thing, but wound up post-mission at Utah State in Logan, and it's funny. I don't know if I was like drawn to sales per se, but maybe part of like my high-strung competitive nature or whatever, it was almost like, even though I'm not necessarily drawn to sales, that is the thing that I know of that makes the most money that's going on this summer, and I would be disappointed in myself if I did something less than the best thing I know of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, well, actually, the first summer after my mission, I didn't wind up going. I had this hookup at Vivint. I was going to go with some Vivint dudes. Good team, good setup. That kind of, I don't know. I had a weird feeling about it. To their credit, they crushed it. So it's not that it like. It's not like my weird feeling was that they were going to scam me or something. I'm sure it would have been fine. Had another different hookup with some friends to go do pest control, but I don't know. I think I wanted to go back to St. George, where my folks lived at the time. And it went well, because I wound up meeting my wife and getting engaged and getting married all within like 6 months.
There you go. That's the story. Right?
Yeah. We're a couple of those. Yeah. But yeah, like that summer I went home to December, we're married. And then the next summer, okay, I go out with some friends It was the first year Aptive was active. We went to Las Vegas and sold some pest control.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, if I remember correctly, didn't stay long in the pest space, nor in the door-to-door space.
No.
At that point.
Yeah. So just to fully explain the context here, like I said, I actually didn't view myself as some guy who was going into sales. By that time, I was actually graduated school, like as we go out that summer, and I was committed to go to law school at University of Texas that fall. Okay. So I'm going out just to basically put together some tuition money in my mind, and you know, some people certainly have to go be lawyers in the world. So nothing against that. But I think the thought of I've got something better, more legitimate or whatever coming to me in the future was a little bit of a killer for that summer.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's this little thing we all go through in our heads of like, do I need to commit and get good at this? Like, how important is it to be good at this, I guess? Or, and this isn't super conscious, this is subconscious, but is it super important that I commit and get good at this, or could I just phone it in? Okay? And, you know, if my way I esteem myself and my standard of success that I hold for myself depends on getting good at pest control this summer, I'm going to do it. Yeah. But if I can go home and say, man, low-key, screw pest control, 3 months from now I'm in law school anyway, then, I don't know, maybe you cop out. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So...
That's interesting. I mean, I think it's so interesting that everyone who goes in door-to-door, leaves door-to-door, and has done really well, they've still put in everything they got to go do door-to-door before they transition, and then they come back and they build better, and we'll talk about that. But it's like interesting the approach you have is like, instead of having that as a backup, and most people just go like, oh, cool, I have another thing to do after the summer. I'm just going to go give it a shot, versus like, I'm going to go be good at this.
Yeah, man. And I mean, honestly, like, sure, it'd be cool if my story was some kind of, I destroyed it, my whole sales career, whatever. But no, honestly, like, I think maybe one of the useful parts of my story for somebody is kind of perspective on what, like, being immature in your career outlook looks like. And then growing up, because one of my big things that I preach to my people all the time now is the way we look at our job, the pride we have in it, that it's not some kind of means toward some future end. And you know, I've said this on other podcasts before, but there's even like kind of decent companies who their branding right now is door-to-door is some sort of a means to a later end, and so we're just here to help you get where you're going. And you know, they'll still spin it in some kind of positive way, like, we're gonna help you not blow your money and get you invested in stuff. And I'm certainly pro those things, but they're doing it in this undercut the job we do kind of a way, because I don't acknowledge any of that. I feel like this is a industry and a career to be proud of, you know? Right. So it's different. And I say that from experience, because I've been the kid who thought of it the other way. Yeah. You know?
And I've heard you say that on other podcasts, and thought of, you know, is if I were a business owner, would I be saying that essentially about the business that I'm trying to build? Yeah. That I would love to have you, but this isn't where you're going to end up. Like, why, you know, I mean, obviously there's a revolving door with that, and I appreciate the way that you kind of bring the light and things that I've heard about the way that you're presenting it is, why wouldn't this be a viable solution for you to build a career and have longevity in? And I look at some of the most successful people out there that have, you know, started some of these companies, Moxie, Vivint, you know, Altera now, Aptiv, and they have stuck around. They've been in this for 15 plus years. Sure, you're not necessarily out knocking. That's why, you know, leadership and growth and all of that happens. But at the same time, if they would have gone into it just thinking, I'm just going to do this for a couple years, make some cash, and then bounce, but not really, like you said, invest in yourself, learn the concepts, and why wouldn't I want to build a business that way instead? You know.
One of the kind of object lessons I use with my reps all the time, because one of the little interesting things we enjoy is we get to knock in Utah for what we do. Not every product out there is a good one to sell in Utah, but we get to do that quite a bit. And so an experience that we have frequently is you knock some door and you talk to some guy, you know, he's say 40, 45, like, oh yeah, man, I know all about the hustle. I used to knock doors too. And you're like, oh cool, what'd you do? And they're like, oh, I was at Vivint when it was APX or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. And you know, you be gracious about it, right? But there's this little thought going through your head of like, I know a lot of people who were at Vivint when it was APX in 2004, and they're rich as hell now.
Yeah.
Why am I knocking your 3-bedroom house?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's the one of those guys viewed it like a big opportunity, and the other one was dying to go work some cubicle job because he viewed it as a means to an end, right?
Yeah. Deep perspective. I think it's crazy too how people approach the same opportunity in like completely different ways regardless of the skill set. Because one rep could be getting 10 deals and still think is like, oh, this is probably just a summer gig because he's not looking at what he can accomplish.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you something else too, going even a step further. Sometimes you're having that convo, talking to that guy. It's a nice, friendly convo. But the energy they're hitting you with is kind of like, yeah, son, I remember when I was in your shoes, but then I grew up and did XYZ thing. And you're sitting there, again, still polite back, but you're just like, wow. If that's growing up, I'm staying here, man. I will stay here. You know?
Yeah, I've got a better trajectory. Just sticking with what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like you have to be ungaslightable on the value of your career, because you'll have people doing worse things, saying that thing you're doing that you feel like is better, it's not. Even though you're looking right at the better thing, thinking it's better, and looking at the worst thing, knowing that it's worse. There's 10 of us, and there's one of you, and we vote that you can't do that anymore. Yeah. And, you know, like I said, you have to be ungaslightable on that point, and just be like, no, actually, I feel like my job's pretty cool.
So talk to me about how that transition happened for you to get back into the door-to-door space after law school, after, you know, working at those jobs that you were at, and, you know, coming back to, I assume at that point you're like, okay, I'm going to establish myself. I'm going to actually run with this thing now and not just go for like another summer gig, because it wasn't during summertime.
Right. No, Windows, when I got back into it, was a full-time year-round model. Yeah. So to answer that question, you know, kind of on a similar note to like what society thinks is and isn't a cool thing, right? Again, some people certainly need to go be lawyers. Some people certainly need to go be doctors. So I'm not anti that generally, but I think sometimes me especially those like long paths, the 10 years of school type paths or whatever. It's funny, everybody looks at those kids and they say, wow, so ambitious, go you, or whatever. Sometimes there's a thing in the kid's head of like, I want the credibility and the respect that comes with this career, but there's also this there's this like Jekyll and Hyde thing going on in my brain. The other part of my brain doesn't want to have a job right now. So what I'll do is I'll choose a career path that's both long and also prestigious. I'll borrow all the prestige from later down the road. In the current moment, all I have to do is be a student. You get what I'm saying?
No, it's like you said, you're borrowing the future accolades of what you're supposedly going to become, but you haven't actually done it. And so psychologically, sometimes we're sitting in that thinking that I've already achieved these things when I haven't even surpassed that timeline.
Yeah, and I don't know to what extent it's still like this, but certainly in like the 2000s and the 10s, people around my age, I'm 32, I don't know how old y'all are. Yeah, about my age. People about our age and parents about our parents' age, you know, boomers and millennials, right? We had all of the old people in the world just ready to congratulate us for being headed to grad school. So there's all this validation out there, you know, for this, right? But anyway, I get a year into law school because becoming a lawyer is what I had chosen. And I'm just like, man, I don't like this at all. I don't like the school. I had done some little internship type things, didn't like the work, didn't really click or connect with almost anybody at the school. And it's just like, okay, presumably this kind of translates to who will be my coworkers for my future career as well. I don't click at all. You know, they're sitting there kind of nerding out about whatever case we're discussing. I'm in the back of the class on my laptop, like looking at like how my stocks did that day, or reading something really like businessy, right? And I was just like, man, I gotta get out of here. So I quit. And I always tell people I feel like I kind of grew up, maybe not in every way, but in like a provider worker mentality. I think I really grew up when I quit law school, because the next day I started working at a restaurant I'd worked at previously. I just got a new job, and I was actually on shift that night, because that's one of the beautiful things about restaurants is they can put you right to work. Yeah, and the reason that I feel like that was such like a maturation is because I was willing to part ways with just this like I'm mommy and daddy's little boy, and all the old people are going to afford me all this unearned prestige, versus I don't care about that. I just have to put food on the table, even if it's unglamorous. You know, it's kind of opposite sides of the coin. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you go from one where that's what some people grew up wanting to become, versus you're kind of at a point of like, I can't have that want anymore. I need to actually execute.
Yeah, this is what I have to do, period.
And the courage too. I think it takes a lot of courage to really go have that mentality to really make that decision, because I think like there's probably other 60% people who are in the same exact position of like, oh, maybe I don't like what I'm going to do, but they don't want to go take that step because of society press. The pressure from society is like the biggest hurdle of like, how do you get away from the perspective, what people will think about what you're going to do.
And they'd still be there. Yeah, they still are right now. Yeah.
And so then from there, get back into the restaurant space.
Yeah.
How long were you there before moving into the windows?
So, probably a year and a half. You know, the restaurant stuff was supposed to be the job that I have while I'm getting a more kind of like career track job. Graduated in economics, good grades. So like, turns out this isn't even how the world works, but if you're like an ignorant 22-year-old, 24, however old I was, and you think, oh, you just have a degree with good grades and people hire you for jobs, I should have gotten a job, right?
I got all those boxes checked. Where's my job? Come on, right?
Boxes, man, give me money now. So, you know, it kind of like went poorly. You know, if the listeners haven't gleaned this yet, the picture I'm painting is I was like a high-achieving but very naive early and mid-20s kid. But, yeah, I mean, I kind of dilly-dallied in the restaurants and the Uber and the substitute teaching and all that kind of stuff for like a year before I, through a friend, got set up to do windows. And it was funny because when I had left sales previously, definitely partially because of my own fault, but also it was just a tough summer for that team, that location, all that type of stuff. It was a bad experience for everybody there, I think. So I had said, man, I don't ever want to go do that again. But, you get in need of money badly enough, and you have enough other jobs say no, you're like, okay, you know what, I'll do whatever I have to do. So, again, meet this friend. He gets us set up with my old boss. He actually never wound up doing the job. My old boss in Windows, and get started.
Awesome. And so then that was in St. George at the time?
Correct, yeah.
And so you, old boss, couple other people on the team?
There was one rep prior to me.
Okay.
Yeah, our old boss was my closer.
Okay.
One previous rep was setting, and then I started setting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was it like a winter time and you started, or was it summer?
It was September.
Oh, so about to be colder.
Yeah, it was St. George, so it was decent. It was decent, man. They were primitive times. We didn't have company shirts. I'd just wear something I felt like looked nice. No shirts. I remember he hit like 4 doors with me and showed me a set, and I was like, okay, I can do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it was, the business was new. I'm not sure he knew how big he wanted to go or not go at that point. It was a little bit of a lifestyle business still, so I'd set an appointment and he'd show up like wearing like board shorts and Crocs because he was at the pool until he got the call. You know what I mean? So again, like primitive times, but started hot. I was hungry, man. Hungry, grateful, stoked to be there. I remember I made 3 sales a week for each of my first 3 weeks. So, and the pay scale's changed a lot. It's gone way up since then.
Yeah.
So
at this company, at what point do you kind of decide like, okay, I'm in. Like, let's go scale this thing. Let's like go pour more into it instead of, do I need to look elsewhere?
Okay. No, I was stoked immediately.
Okay.
I remember the day that he was training me, hitting those few doors. One of the things he mentioned is he was like, there is a spot for somebody else to close deals. If that's something that interests you, we could look at that after you get some success. And I was like, yes.
Ready to go.
Yeah, because I had been making roughly $600 or $700 a week at the restaurant, and this is working hard. I'd work doubles 6 days, and then I made $1,500 each of my first 3 weeks. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, by my standards at that point in time, that was bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in. I bring in Kyle, who's my co-founder at Performance. I bring in my brother-in-law briefly. Bring in some people. We didn't have formal promotion criteria to become the closer. But one of the things he'd said to me one time is he was like, yeah, man, if you keep bringing people in, we'll have to because I'll be so busy. So I kind of heard that, and I was like, I'm going to freaking force this guy. Yeah, I'm gonna collapse his life with appointments if he doesn't train me to be a closer. So I did that. And yeah, like I said, just hungry and grateful, man, because I'd been through the ringer prior to that.
And so how long was that before, you and Kyle go start Performance?
So we have a big run-up down there in St. George from like fall through a winter through a spring. Ironically, we actually do like the biggest times ever in the window industry up to that point. Sorry, I'm kind of congested. And then as like summer's beginning, I moved up to the Wasatch Front up here, actually, like to Lehi, because I was going to start an office and get the manager override all. It was an income opportunity for me. And that was tough because again, these were caveman times in the window business. Like we didn't know how to do it. I came by myself. We didn't have anybody. We didn't really know how to run Indeed interviews or anything. So it's me, just self-gen, close, follow up on the deal. Any recruiting that's happening is technically my organic recruiting, but I'm not from here. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like making friends at the gym and seeing other door knockers in Hood and just being like, no, come do what I do. So, but eventually we build that up. Took 6 months, let's say. Get a nice little team going. There's 5 or 6 of us, and then also I kind of like recruited a new St. George team for the guys who stayed behind. And somewhere in there, there was some things said that weren't exactly made good on. So me and Kyle and our guys left and started Performance in April of 2020. Okay. So it was a year and a half with our old company. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And was Windows like you're like, I love this industry, I understand the opportunity, or was it more like you just understood the Windows?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it because honestly, in a different circumstance and with a little more maturity, I'm sure I could have been good at pest control too. But my only pest control experience, we got wrecked. Yeah. Wrecked.
We'll stay away.
Yeah, and whereas in Windows, we were like not that it was a big industry, but we were the goats. We were the actual goats of doing it. So we were like, yeah, man, we're staying. And it was less saturated. It had some appeals to it, especially recruiting other door-to-door reps. Like, I actually remember doing pest control and thinking to myself all these things like, man, I feel like I could like this better if instead of bringing 50 people to Las Vegas, they'd brought 20 and we could have a little more abundant Hood. Or, man, I could even get behind this if instead of going out at 10 a.m., we went out at 3, and maybe to compensate for that, we could stay all year. I remember thinking all these things, and then when kind of found Windows and then kind of tinkered with it ourselves, we kind of made it in the image of all these things that I wanted.
Like all the things you couldn't have, you would solve it right now.
Yeah, exactly. So,
is that how you guys started your Windows company? Was it like different timings and how you guys will go out and work and smaller teams?
Yeah,
more.
Basically, yeah. I mean, I've got kind of an idea of how big a team ought to be. Sorry, I guess I go backwards from how big the metro is. You need about this size of metro to support this size of team, so that they don't restart their knocking loop too fast. And the team has to be that size so that the manager can make enough of an override so that is a attractive income opportunity for somebody to want to be the manager, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, yeah, we again, going back to like, I don't want door to door to be a means to an end. I want it to be a lifestyle people can get behind. We kind of tried to design it that way. And that's not to say there's no standard. We certainly have standards. As a matter of fact, in the window business now, we're probably the highest standard company, ironically. But relative to some of these other door-to-door lifestyles that people think of as being unsustainable, we made it more so.
Gotcha. And it's interesting you just compared it. I was going to bring up is like you build this to last versus the mindset when they're recruiting. They're like, oh, cool, summer gig, graduate. So you don't have that to start with. You're like, I want to provide a career to anyone wanting to work with us. Yeah. And that's why your model was like year long, right? Like it's not summer. It's not like blitz. You just come out, get a job, like an actual job, and you work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a summer model. I suppose you could be a college kid, but you don't have to be. Mm-hmm. It's funny, like when modern door-to-door was originally created, it was just all summer model stuff because it was all college kids. But I mean, shoot, I know I know a lot of kids who just don't go to college these days. It's like, it used to be you only wanted to recruit 22, 23-year-olds who are in college, and if you're in Utah doing the LDS thing, maybe they've come home from their mission or whatever, but these days a lot of our recruits are 18, not going to college, not going on a mission. It's time to get a big boy job.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so 2 things I want to touch on is as you transition, you and Kyle go create performance. Before, you were considered regionals or just managers at the previous company?
Yeah. I ran the office, so I was a manager.
Okay.
Kyle was a closer there.
Okay. And then transitioning to owning and running your own, first question, how does that change from what you were doing previously, is like running an office to now being, I got to go figure out suppliers. I got to go figure out how to like build this, be the financial backside to it. And then the second part, I heard in another podcast, you did have to go fundraise some debt to get that going. So how does that new stress live on you at that point compared to just being a manager before? I'm an owner now, like I got to go figure this out.
Yeah, it's chaos, man, because the higher you are in an org, the more resilient your belief has to be. Your belief level just has to be the highest. You have to have the highest belief level, right? And as you go from in the sales vertical, okay, as you go from setter, closer, manager, however your sales org might be scaled, you know, director, VP of sales, whatever. Sure, that's easy. Then at some point you get big enough that your job isn't just sales anymore, you're ops. You know, again, however your org is scaled. Maybe you started your own and became the owner. Maybe you're now, you know, if you go from VP of sales to CEO, you just became an ops person, right? Now, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, we don't have money for this? Or
before you were like, wait, I just ask, you give it to me because I'm in charge of all the money now coming in, and now you're owner and you're like, oh, I have to figure out where these things are.
Yeah. The thing is that people view ops like it's magic, like you just throw money at it and you just like ops is a thing you can just buy by the unit or something. Yeah. It's like, no, there's humans there who mess it up, and then you have to go fix it and whatever it may be. So yeah, that's super stressful. And then, like I said, you still have to have your belief level where it is. So what you have to do is, the owner, executive of a new company, is you have to get off the angry phone call with the angry install lady, get wrecked, you know, be stressed. She says she's going to sue you. You don't have any money. You're like, wait a second. How do you deal with lawsuits again? And then you go look at your bank account. You're broke. And then you go out for your sales meeting. You're just like, all right, guys.
Good belief at the highest.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't tell anybody anything either. You know.
Yeah.
You don't say, hey guys, we're getting wrecked, but I'm still stoked. You just don't even say that at all. You just say, I'm stoked.
Yeah. Do you think your economics degree helped you at all in the financial part, or was it more like you have to learn everything from scratch?
I didn't do like the super practical economics classes. I did a lot of theory. So, you know, like perhaps I could say it helped me think about things smartly, but
It's different to think than to execute.
yeah, it's not like I knew accounting or the books or anything like that. Yeah, we had to design a lot of processes. We're very like SOP based. We have a way we do the sales process, and just that. We have a way we do the ops, and it's just that. So there's a lot of design, but that's kind of how we've built what we've built. Is that me and Kyle did all the roles at each step. So then, you know, when it comes time to hire somebody to do that role we were doing, we say, good news, I was good at that. I'm gonna show you just how to do it. You know.
Yeah, I've got the playbook for you. Now let's go rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And so you guys are at a point. So catch us up to where you at 2025. How many offices, revenue, and how did you create that system to now go open up all these new offices and have that continued growth?
We're at man, I lost count because we're like mid announcing about. I think with the one that we just announced for April, that'll make 18 offices.
Okay. Wow.
And we did 64 million last year. We'll do quite a bit more. No, sorry, we did 84 million last year. 84 million last year, 60 some the year before that. We'll do something in the ones this year, 120, 150.
So going from like one office 2020 late April to now 18, I'm sure there's a very different learning curve when you're dealing with like one office to now dealing with 18 offices. But when you're growing and scaling your business, what was like the key things you're like, I would never like divvy from this ethic or this moral principle or this line of financial line I'm never going to break? Like, what were those things which you just did which helped you get scaled up?
You know, I always tell people there's lots of ways to be dishonest besides just affirmatively telling a lie. And there's lots of ways to be a thief that aren't just burglary. You know what I mean? And you have to really go deep in it. Like, okay, dishonesty, like there's lies of commission and lies of omission. So telling a lie versus not saying something you should have. But there's actually more. There's saying something that you know will be misinterpreted and you don't correct the interpretation. For instance, you know, I had Jason Walton on my podcast. He was giving like a pest control example. He says, when you say we're signing up the neighbors, okay, at the beginning, maybe you did sign up the neighbor. And let's say you don't sign up the next neighbor. Now it's the neighbor 2 doors down. At some point it's the neighbor down the street. Maybe then you jump hoods. Maybe now it's the neighbor from across the highway the other side. If you're saying it that way, I guess it's truthful. If you're still just saying the neighbor, I don't know where it becomes a lie, but at some point it did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, anyway, we just try to hold ourselves to a high standard of integrity. We pay our debts. We don't lie. We don't cheat. Frankly, we're pretty competitive and ruthless even in some other ways, but it's not dishonest.
Gotta have that moral standing, the foundation, right?
Right.
Because then it's from there. I mean, one of the things I really appreciate about the things you've said and the way that you guys are building is this is not a churn and burn. Right. It's not a come test it, come do something. It's this is where I would want to see you for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Like there is longevity here. Yep. This is a solution, not just a means to an end.
Yeah.
You know, as some other people have portrayed businesses.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. You know, you have to have a vision that everybody else's vision can be accomplished within your vision. You know, so like if I have 10 guys who want to make $1 million, it's like, okay, well, what position will make them $1 million? Potentially my manager position, definitely my regional position. Let's just go with regional. Okay, I need to have 10 regions. How big is the dang company? Then it's pretty big. So if I don't have a vision where we're going to have 10 regions, then I cannot feed those guys.
You mentioned you guys have 20 golden doors in the last year, which is probably the most significant amount of golden doors any company has in that quick time frame of being a company.
Yeah.
What is that in the Windows industry? Is that like, how many golden doors did they have last year?
There was only 26 in total. Wow. So yeah, we had the lion's share.
And you guys, I mean, are in comparison with some of the biggest names in the door-to-door space and with amount of golden door reps.
Grit and Active both had like 24, 25, and then it was us.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
How do you go from being a startup 4 years ago to growing this fast and investing in the right leaders in terms of your reps?
You know, I think the big thing is kind of what I was saying earlier about training. Our training is a golden door system. If they do it right, it's a golden door system. They don't even need to do anything much past it. So it's just keeping it pure, keeping it, and even as it's passed down through 3 or 4 iterations of somebody training the next person, it's just continuing to keep it standard, keep it pure, keep the standards high, not allow too much deviation. You know, but you know, on the note of kind of like how do we decide who to invest in? Truth is, And this is definitely like a manpower problem sometimes, but I would say we just invest in everybody equally. Truth is, we don't know who's going to be good until it plays out. We on another podcast on Sam Taggart's, I was talking with him about some of the people we have who just really kill it. Making multiple six-figure incomes with us, who don't necessarily fit the mold of who you expect a door-to-door salesperson to be. And yeah, like I said, we've had people who you wouldn't expect turn out to be killers. We've had people who we thought were 5-star prospects flame out. So
Yeah.
it's just...
Yeah, it's the old saying of never judge a book by its cover, right?
Right.
Because you never know. They could have a very slow start. They could have a hot start, and like you said, kind of flame out. So you gotta have that equal representation across the board. So with you guys building that system, obviously that's on the sales side. How has the system also worked with opening up new markets? Because you're mentioning you guys want to open up one new office per month this year, right?
Right. Operationally, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. The good news is, when you're the first and the biggest, you kind of just claim all the good vendors and get the good rates, and
It's not a bad spot to be in. So you just make it happen. Gotcha.
yeah. We have a wonderful install partner, wonderful window supplier, wonderful financiers. The install thing is essentially turnkey now. They only work for us. We only use them. They're willing to expand essentially as we do. So, yeah, just humming along.
Love it.
Yeah.
Are there also more challenges because you guys are so big that the decisions you guys have to make, no one else has made? So there's not really a learning. You guys can go back and say like, oh, these are things we can do. You're gonna have to go learn from your own faults.
I think that cuts in our favor because there's not I say this with humility, because there's not a playbook where everybody's just relying on intuition and ingenuity. And there's been times where I think we have avoided the fatal pitfall, and some of our competitors haven't. So,
yeah. And I have a follow-up on that. Just as like a first-time founder now, what would you say one or two of the lessons where you're like, hey, I will always stick by that thing now, because I've seen it play out and I know that it's proven.
Yeah. One thing is, it is very hard to change standards on reps, basically, like while having the same reps. Okay, if you start something new, you can have new standards. If you are willing to basically whitewash a whole office, you can do new standards. If they're higher, okay. But it's difficult to change standards and keep the same people. Like I said, if they're higher, I suppose you can always lower standards. But I bring this up because what I see a lot of the time is people will begin with really loosey-goosey stuff. Sometimes it's their pitch. We'll say, man, we all work when we want over here. It's whatever works for you. It's whatever. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. And then at some point in time, there's a management freak out. They're like, man, we don't sell anything. We suck. And then they try to institute standards, and they lose everybody. Okay, so I suppose the advice is start high. If you have to relax a little bit after the fact, you can always do that. That will go over great. But the adjusting upwards doesn't.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think we're gonna have to apply that. I mean, setting high is always gonna help you kind of like balance out any of the bad things happening with you guys, because if you guys are focused on just producing at a higher outcome, then even if you're not producing, then at least you're putting in the structure to make sure no one is slacking in the team.
Yeah. On that note, it's kind of similar, but you have to, again, because like I said, we try to follow our kind of code of integrity. One of those is doing the things we say we're going to do. As such, I'm really careful before I commit that I'm going to do something. You know what I mean? Some of these guys who break promises, I hear about it and I'm like, of course he broke that promise. He should have never made it. That was a stupid promise to make. You know what I mean? And one of those things you got to know as an executive is like sometimes somebody will be having a really like off the cuff conversation with you. They like you're halfway talking to somebody else and like, hey, what do you think about this? And you're just like, yeah, sure. And it's like, you don't even remember that you said that, and they're going to bring it up 3 months from now.
Yeah.
Like, hey, remember I told you I was taking 3 weeks off during our competition to go to Disneyland? And you're like, what? No. But they told you. Anyway.
So lessons, be conscious.
Yeah, be conscious.
Yeah.
I suppose it comes from first knowing that you're going to do everything you said you're going to do, and then second, thinking really hard about what you said you're going to do.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, so you host your own podcast, D2D Success Stories. You've had a lot of great guests on there.
Thanks.
You know, founders of other companies. What's a couple lessons you've learned from some of those guys? Because obviously rubbing shoulders with big names.
Yeah. One of the big. This is definitely a theme with everybody, but I love the way Kenny Cox explained it. One of the themes is that all the guys, because I like to bring on like real like old timers, long timers with some tenure. One of the themes of the guys who have had the most success, made the most money, built the best kind of like personal brand, done the most essentially, is that they just hunker down and build. They're not looking around so much, right? And Kenny's advice, that it's not his original advice, he got it from like the COO of the NFL or something, but now he's promoting it, and it's genius, is there's 4 things that you ask yourself about your job. I'm gonna laugh if I can't even remember them now. It's like
But there's 4 of them.
There's 4 of them. Yeah, it's like, am I being fairly compensated? Do I like who I work with? Am I having a good impact? And I don't remember the 4th. There we go. But anyway, there's these questions that you pop up and ask yourself periodically. Periodically is a key of if you like where you're working. And if you can answer yes, then you put your head down for another couple years, right? And even if the answer is no, the first kind of follow-up question you ask yourself is, can I affect change in that? Like, you give the situation a chance to be fixed before you just hit the button, right? But I think it's especially important that you do it every couple of years, because the other thing you don't want to be doing is making a whole new decision on if you want to work a place every day, right? This is kind of a thing I say from experience. There's young people, certainly young men. I don't know if it's young people or if it's just young men. I have to think about if girls do this, but a lot of the time we just have this need to just hit the button every 12, 18 months. It's just like, oh, this is going good, and my subconscious hates that, so let's quit.
Shake it up.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. When you kind of look back at it 10 years later, you're like, that dude hasn't got much done.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes the best thing you can do is just kind of be boring for a while. Keep doing your same thing.
Yeah. And that's, something I appreciate about what you guys are doing and mentioned a couple times now, but even I kind of asked you, okay, is there an exit strategy? Is there something like, you're like, no, we're building this thing. Like, there's no like horizon. There's no, we're trying to go do X, Y, Z. It's, we're going to keep building. We're going to keep being strategic about it, and not just trying to like, oh, in 2 years, then I'm done. I only have to work there. It's, no, I'm going to be invested. I'm going to keep growing, keep building the roots to this, and let's see how big it can go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Levi, we appreciate you having on.
Yeah.
For people to follow you, obviously D2D Success Stories podcast, Instagram, other social media platforms.
That's pretty much it. At Levi Henrie, LeviHenrie. And like you said, D2D, the letters, D2D Success Stories is the podcast. We're on all the major stuff.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you, man. This was fun.
Thanks, fellas.
Okay.
Thanks, Levi.